So I appreciate everybody coming on today. The topic is, I think I titled it a candid discussion around lead generation. So, what I've been realizing lately is just like, well, first of all, like lead generation is it. It's I guess I want to say it's like it's overused in a way, but it's not, right? Like it's all that matters for this business. And I think the realization that I'm at with it is I don't think it's explained properly or really looked at properly or just digested properly for any agent new in the business or well established. And I'm saying this from my perspective of 10 years in the business, and like I feel like I just came to this realization 2 months ago. So we're all in the same boat here, people. And by no means, I tell the people that are partnered with us all the time, the agents that are partnered with us all the time, like we're all struggling together. I'm not speaking from a pedestal, and I have the same struggles. Anthony has the same struggles, and as most of you. So I don't know who you're probably here for a reason. Like, does anybody here just feel like they're expert level, lead generation and full clarity around it, or I should ask maybe so like, who's struggling with the concept of lead generation? Fair enough. Thank you. Here's what I want to dive into is that I guess like starting off the explanation of it in terms of the way that I think of it is lead generation is the conduit to you having business to work, right? And you're essentially what lead generation means is building the effort that it takes to build relationships to where you're the person that your people or whoever you're targeting thinks of when they actually need to do something or have a question or in real estate, right? Whether if they need to buy or sell or they want to do something or just even all across the spectrum to like they think of you because their sink is leaking and they know that you're in real estate and that you may have a plumber to refer. So the touches that the attempts, the effort that it takes to build those relationships to where you're remembered as that source for, all things real estate is essentially the purpose of lead generation. And essentially our jobs as realtors in this business. I want to pause there and just like, is there any questions around that? Any lack of clarity? Anything that doesn't make sense based on what I just rambled? And for those that I'll do it again, for those that just joined, let's define lead generation as the effort, the touches, the attempts, the conversations that you're having with whoever it is, people in your database, people that you're targeting, in order to get them to the point where you have a relationship in that they remember you when they actually need something to do with real estate. And then they kind of correlate you to real estate. Lead generation is getting yourself to that point. Oh, yeah. Anybody feel differently? Anybody have questions around that? Cool. I want to stay, but like, please interrupt this. I prefer these to be like open discussions. Just stop me. I tend to just ramble. So like, if one person isn't understanding something, chances are I'm losing others too. So please just chime in, unmute yourself, and just hop right into the discussion. Okay. And it'd be good for, more involvement is better. You don't want to, nobody needs to hear me just talk for an hour straight on a Friday at noon. So with that said, Yeah, I think one of the things that I've realized recently is that, lead generation just isn't really properly explained, and not shooting like trainers or even the industry. I just think it's something that like the clarity around it is lacking from the start, and the clarity, that evolves from it. Like it's you can be 10 years in the business and not have full clarity, and not that that's okay, but like it's something that you should, have an understanding on so that you can be more effective with your business. But here's how I'm thinking of this, in that like I don't think failure in this business or around lead generation is talked about enough. And to make it clear that when you're lead generating, if you're not failing the overwhelming majority of the time, then you're probably not doing it the right way, or you're not doing it enough. You're just not getting enough at bats. You're not, taking enough stabs at it. You're not getting enough attempts. And here's how I can relate to this easily is that just from a conversion rate percentage in this business, which we tie into like the economic model that we use, right? To get to a point where it's like, okay, I need to make this amount of calls per week to get to this many appointments, so on, so forth, down the sales funnel to get a deal. You're doing pretty good if you're a 5% conversion rate from number of conversations you have to appointments booked off of that. Okay. Meaning if you talk to 100 people in a week and you have 5 appointments for new business booked off of that, that's pretty good. Like that's good. So that means you, in theory, failed 95 times that week. Right? And you had 5 wins. And let's first define like an appointment as like you're meeting to consult with somebody, or having a, the formal process is started to help them buy, sell, or invest in real estate, whatever it is. Not an appointment of like, I'm showing my 16th home to a buyer that I've been working with for 2 months. Okay. So an appointment for new business. Again, if you're making 100 conversations happen in a week and you're subscribing to that bold mentality, right, or program, you're doing decent if you're getting 5 appointments from that. So you failed 95 times in theory. Failure in this business is not embraced enough or not talked about enough, and that, in the West Rochester office, we have a sign right front and center. It says, fail often, fail fast, and fail forward. It's not looked at enough as like, you can still talk to those 95 people that you didn't convert to an appointment and still look at that as successful because you had an interaction that furthers the relationship. So again, the goal is that they think of you when they're ready or have a question or need to do something. Just because you didn't book an appointment with that person, or they're not ready to do anything, but you made the attempt to lead generate to them on that day and that week, that's still success, even though it didn't lead to an appointment. But here's where I'm at with it is like, let's imagine yourself as a brand new agent in the business, and say you sign up for Bold on day 1, right? And they're telling you get after it, 100 conversations a week for the next 8 weeks or whatever it is. Well, for most new agents, like those conversations starting off are, hey, I want to let you know I'm in real estate now. I'm working with Keller Williams Realty. Everything's going great. Just wanted to reach out and connect with you, and certainly not expecting you to just sell your house right now, but keep me in mind. Anything I can help with down the road, let me know. That sort of script, whatever works for you, right? Well, now imagine yourself as a new agent 3 weeks into the business, and you've actually pounded the pavement and you've talked to 300 people, you may have some business out of that, right? You may have some leads. Chances are it's not going to be plentiful, right? So now you're frustrated and you're like, I just talked to 300 people in 3 weeks and I got 2 appointments out of it. What the hell are these people talking about? That's kind of the realization that I'm at with this lead generation concept, in that like it's still the number one thing in our business, but it's not talked about enough in terms of what it takes and how much you're going to fail, and to know that failure is a good thing. Embrace the failure. You have to fail. If you're not failing the overwhelming majority of the time while you're lead generating or in this business period, then you're not doing it enough. You're not doing it the right way. You're just not getting after it.
Jason, I got a question.
Fire away, man. Appreciate you.
We go through the 300 contacts, right? Say that's your entire phone. New agent. Now what do we do? What would you suggest someone, how do you find more people to call?
So you're saying like, I've got, I've exhausted my initial sphere of influence. It's 300 people deep, and I did that in 3 weeks time. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this spills into it's relevant, but it's a database conversation, right? In terms of expanding your database and, finding new people to add to it. So there's a whole world of possibilities within that. But I always, I'm going to challenge everybody to think from the standpoint of, the 300 people in that example. Chances are there's more people that you can find to add to your sphere and lead generate to and add to your database and market to continually. Now, where this may get debunked, if you're telling me like, okay, I just moved here, I don't know 300 people or more than that in my local market, I get it. That's totally probable. But, think of, the beauty about this company is we have the ability to market our business globally. So you don't have to stop your marketing effort or your lead generation effort just at your local market. Now, what I'll say is if you're coming from the standpoint of like, I just don't know that many people, period. Whatever walk of life you came from before and you just don't have a large database, no problem. Now it's just a matter of, you're going to have to get after it and pound the pavement and meet new people and get them in your database and then lead generate to them consistently moving forward, but, tactfully or effectively, whatever you want to call it. Does that answer your question, Pete, or help?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, I mean, and this is where the world is your oyster, right? In terms of like, hey, start running command ads and working data that way to try to meet people. Open houses, picking people off there, networking events, whatever, whatever you got to do, door knock, whatever you got to do to meet people. Post up at the bar every night. I don't, probably wouldn't recommend that, right? But, however you're going to find a way to interact with people to build new relationships is very much going to be a thing. But outside of that, what I would encourage you to do is open up the high school yearbook, pick through it, think of all your past jobs, all your whatever in the past, and anybody that would remember you and recognize either your name or your face or both, you should be marketing. You should be lead generating to them and have them in your database and marketing to them moving forward. Again, guys, I'm not speaking from a pedestal and saying that I have every single person from my high school yearbook in my database and I lead generate to them and talk to them 4 times a year. And but this is the concept. And this is the concept if you don't have, I use a wedding list analogy for a database or a sphere of influence, right? So, meaning like if you were to get married soon and you and your spouse are there's no budget to the wedding. You want to have a blowout wedding, 500 person guest list, right? Both sides of the family are just inviting everybody and anybody. Well, you know the people that are coming to your wedding, they know you, right? Or like, your dad's inviting his poker buddies, like they're gonna know your dad, and his son or daughter is in real estate and marketing to me, and that's pretty cool. But that's where you start the database at, is with that wedding list, and then you have to go layers deep from there. I guess my point is, Pete, I've kind of gone on a ramble to your question here, but like there's always the ability to find new people to lead generate to. I would urge you to start with the people that you know and they know you. So however deep into the past those relationships have to be picked off from, fine. If you've exhausted that and there's just nobody else for you to find in any walk of life from the past, then yeah, now it's okay. Better go start meeting new people. Better start doing open houses every weekend. And I can tell you as an aside, guys, like the last couple of years in the market, open houses haven't been super effective for agents, but they're back. You think about these buyers that are out there that are kind of, on the fence now because of the interest rates. They're looky-looing in open houses, and a lot of them are interviewing agents that are there. Anthony tells this story. I have a similar, he did it more than I did. Like starting off in the business, I did an open house every Saturday and Sunday. I think he did 2 back-to-back days. He did like 11 to 1 and then like 1:30 to 3:30 or something. So, this business isn't handed to you, as we all know, right? So it's a matter of what you're going to do to go out and get it. And I would argue that going out and getting it means, what are you doing to meet new people and build relationships with them? And essentially building relationships equals lead generation. However, you need to do that. I think, the biggest thing I wanted to like just have an open, candid discussion on, like the topic is just, guys, embrace the failure. This is tough. Like it's tough to lead generate. I get it. It's easy enough to say, hey, go out and build relationships and talk to people. Sounds easy on paper, right? Like I get the mental block or whatever, psychological, even physical to a degree, that it is to like actually get off your ass and go call 20 people today. And I'm guilty of it myself. Again, I'm not speaking from a pedestal saying that I'm perfect. I had a shitty lead generation week this week. Here to admit, who else? Who else didn't lead generate enough this week? Good. We're all in the same boat, guys. We're all in the same boat. You talk to me and tell me somebody's bold and they lead generate every single week, 100 conversations a week. They're a machine. They're automated. I'd love to know more, but I'm probably, I'm telling them they're full of shit until I learn more about what their deal is. Sorry for my language, everybody. I'm Anthony's business partner, so you're probably used to it, I guess. iPhone, hand up. Go ahead.
Is that me? Hey,
Yeah,
Jason,
yeah,
it's Lindsay.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, the model says to call in the morning, but
Yeah.
I'm catching a lot of people at work, and I know for me, same thing. Don't answer my door. Don't pick up my phone calls. Any thing you like to speak to as far as, hey, we found that this is a better time, or, there's no harm in texting. Think about even our transactions. How often do we talk by the phone? You want to speak to that at all, as far as,
Absolutely. Great question.
that painful, like, hey, Jay, I'm at work right now. I can't talk, that's just awkward.
Yep. And, I think one point is that, and it's not, don't get me wrong, like you don't get paid on just like tallying up conversations and getting to 100 for a week, right? You could argue that you kind of do, but essentially, like the whole like tracking conversation of trying to reach a goal of 20 a day, 100 a week, whatever it is there for an accountability tactic in order to drive the activities, right? So you don't get paid off it, but essentially you do because you'll build your business that way, right? But Lynn, to answer your question, I mean, I think, well, first of all, I think the subscription of doing your lead generation in the morning is I think that's rooted in, you know, the analogy of like getting the hard thing done out of the way first. You know, if anybody's read Eat That Frog, is the concept, like you do your most difficult thing of your day and get it done. And then that way you have the rest of the day to do whatever is next on the list. Or, you know, I can hang my head on my day and I'm going to go spend it with my family, or I'm going to go golfing, whatever. But I think that's where a lot of that comes from in terms of doing it in the morning, from a reflection, so to speak, on human nature and how, you know, how just people operate. And like, if you get done what you need to get done and is most important for you in the day, if you get that done early, then, you know, it's, well, one, it's done, but more so, like, you're less likely to not, wait, what am I trying to say? You're less likely to put it off or not get to it, because you know, as the day goes, and, you know, day can turn to crap very quickly, and then it's like, whatever, try again tomorrow, right? And I think the analogy is like people that work out and go to the gym religiously, like a lot of people do it in the morning because you have those terrible days. And if you're going to go do it after work, it's easy enough to be like, no, I'm just going home. I've had enough of this day, quitting time, not going to the gym today, try again tomorrow. So I think that's one element to answer your question, Lynn. I think from there, you know, in terms of successful times of getting a hold of people, you know, I would challenge you, you know, if you are committed to doing it in the morning, you know, I know like the KW, you know, model is 9 to 11, do 8 to 10. That hour of like 8 to 9, like, I don't think 8 to 9 is like a sacred time to where like you're calling too early. 7 to 8, probably, right? But, you know, you're likely to catch the 9 to 5ers that are on their way to work and in the car, sitting in traffic or whatever, and pick up your call. And that may be more effective. But I do, you know, to further answer your question, yeah, I think there's value in like after work time, you know, like 4 to 6, you know, before like dinner time, you know, day ending for people, and you catch them at that point. I guess the concept is like, when are you likely to catch people at their most available moment, right? And those types of time windows generally hold true. Now, if you know when people are working or what their schedule is, then, you know, as much as you can, try to work around that. But that's not always going to align with your schedule. And now we're in the position of like, you know, okay, you're trying, you know, if you're really time blocking your business and lead generating specific to that time block, then, you know, that may get in the way of that. But another thing that you touched on, Lynn, is just like how to communicate, or, you know, how communication can be effective. You got to keep in mind that, you know, if somebody's busy, but they do pick up your call and you just have a quick conversation, sure, failure, but it's a win too. Like you know, here's how I think of things. Like I'm not a scientist, and you know, this is probably a poor explanation on how the brain works, right? But you know, think of neurons firing or whatever the hell happens when you get stimulated or something happens, you know, and even that quick phone call from Lynn, something happened in their brain that leads to the greater good for your business. Sure, if you can get into a 7-minute phone conversation with somebody and really, you know, get into their life or their situation, even better. But just that quick, like, fire, you know, of whatever's happening in people's brains, it counts. something I've been saying lately is our business, we're filling buckets of water with drops of water. So that's that example of like just a quick conversation. I got to go. Thanks for calling. It counts. If you can get into it, a long, meaningful conversation, even better. But again, back to the point of like, embrace failure as success as much as possible. The big where there's failure is just by doing nothing. That's when you're failing. Is that if you're doing nothing or not doing enough based on the plan that you have for your business. That's where failure should be. That's when you look at yourself in the mirror and like, yep, I am failing. I haven't done what I know I need to do because I haven't even tried. Right? Old law, there is no try.
Hey, Jason.
Yep.
So I think the fact that they even picked up the phone
is a win.
Also, in the latest bold,
Mm-hmm.
a text is okay. A text counts as a conversation. Where back when I first took bold 8 years ago, it did not. It was a voice to voice or a face to face.
Yep. No, I think that's one of the things I wanted to address, and it's a good point. I think Lynn touched on it a little bit too. And I think it's important this day and age. Like, I guess, well, before I get to what I'm going to say, I think there's a hierarchy of effectiveness with communication methods, call it that way, right? So like meeting with somebody face to face, eye to eye, across from a table, or whatever the situation is always going to be most effective for, getting your point across, or, converting or building the relationship, right? So here's an example. You're out to dinner with 4 friends that are in your database. And again, you don't get paid on just tallying things up for a week, right? There's 4 conversations for lead generation for the week. Because, I guess, to further that thought, like, you're doing it wrong if real estate doesn't somehow come up at that dinner a little bit, right? And chances are people are going to ask you about it versus you having to go out on a limb and bringing it up. But that counts. Okay. From there, the hierarchy continues in terms of like, okay, a live conversation somehow, phone, Zoom, that sort of, that just a live, not in person, but, you're talking back and forth live, right? Is next most effective. From there, messaging, text messages, my line is whatever the kids are doing these days, sliding in the DMs, whatever, just adapt to it. It's going to be something different 3 years from now, but if your people want to be communicated via Facebook Messenger or whatever, communicate with them that way. And I think this is especially relevant to today's day and age. You have to know how to communicate with your database as much as possible. Meaning if, especially for a younger generation, like they don't want to talk on the phone most of the time, right? So if you know that your friends that you're marketing to in your database and you're in lead generation mode for that person that day, if they're not going to pick up your phone call, then just shoot them a text. It counts. A conversation, back to Chris's point of, like definition of a conversation to count towards bold, right, is an interaction. Back and forth interaction. So here's an example, right? Texting somebody happy birthday and them replying back, thank you. And, hey, how's the family? Whatever, small talk real quick via text. It all counts. It doesn't always have to get to a real estate conversation for it to count as lead generation. It's important to understand that. If you can get into a real estate conversation, great. Like that's where, the priority is. That's where you're going to be most effective. But, again, let's go back to the definition, right? You're just building relationships. Build them the way that, a relationship should work in terms of like a reciprocal manner, right? Like you want to know about them. You want to be in tune to their lives. You want to care about their life. From there, the reciprocal part is they're probably going to ask about you. And then here's your opportunity to talk about real estate, if appropriate. But oftentimes, once you get going with this, I'll put it to you this way. If you're getting more often than not, hey, how's real estate? How's the market? Know that you're onto something. Because that means like they're, even if they have to do like the memory jogger exercise on their end of like, all right, there's, I always use an analogy of like, imagine like coming up on somebody in a grocery aisle, right? And you see, you lock eyes and it's like, okay, there's Chris. All right, what the hell does Chris do? Is what's leading up to that meeting in the middle of the aisle. Even if they're like struggling, like, oh, what the hell is Chris's deal? But they get to that point and they remember like, oh yeah, real estate. How's real estate, Chris? That's great. If it's an automatic, the goal is like automatic correlation, like Chris Whitus, real estate. That's when you're really cooking with gas. But it's okay to have people like have to remember what your deal is and then talk to you about it. And guys, here's the unique opportunity that we have in this business is that, I always say this for lack of a better word, real estate's sexy. People want to talk about real estate. It's intriguing. We just a full spectrum of like basic human need of shelter and having a roof over your head to, poking around, watching HGTV or Pinterest and kitchen designs and this and that. And also, like I mentioned earlier, like my sink's leaking. I need a plumber. I'm thinking of my agent who probably has a plumber. Let me call him, her. You got to understand the opportunity that we have in terms of like where we are in an intriguing topic for most people, for overwhelming most people, because again, it's just no matter what, people got to have a roof over their head. From there, like, you full spectrum, like investing. Real estate investing is just wealth building 101, right? So it's kind of always something that people have a goal of. Very few people just have the goal of life to just rent. That's the industry that we're in. That's the opportunity that we have to, essentially try to capitalize on while we're lead generating. That should hit home with you guys, because here's how I relate to it. And I apologize for anybody who's in this industry or knows somebody who's close in the industry, but imagine selling insurance. Nobody wants to talk about insurance. People want to talk about real estate. So I don't mean to offend anybody from the insurance industry, but it's just like, people know they have to have insurance. It's a necessary part of life. They don't really want to talk about it. There's not really a whole lot of exciting stuff happening with insurance policies. So if you're selling insurance, you're probably not going to get the, hey, how's insurance going? If anything, they're avoiding it like, they're going to catch a cold by getting into a conversation about insurance with you. So just understand that opportunity in terms of, how lead generating can now become easy if you embrace that, or easier, I should say. Because chances are, if you're just talking to people about their lives, then they're going to reciprocate and want to ask you about yours. And oftentimes that just comes back to, how's real estate, without you even having to bring it up. But if they're asking about you and they haven't asked it that way, then it's like, yeah, no, everything's good. It's real estate market that I'm in is crazy, but I'm killing it. Things are going well. And then you just open the door from there. What I'll tell you is like, I subscribe to more of like a passive method of lead generation with the sole purpose of building a relationship. I'm not here to tell you that the script of hey, who do you know is looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate with everybody that you talk to is wrong. I'm not here to tell you that. The way that I relate to it is that it's uncomfortable. And I think that, is what a lot of people relate to. So just like, you can take that on and do it and have a high level business with that said. Otherwise, it's a passive relationship building, conversation to where, again, these relationships, human nature works with reciprocal nature. And if you're asking about them, if you're asking about their family, they're going to ask about yours. And if they don't ask about the real estate market, then you have the ability to talk about it because it's a part of your life. You could, and back to like communication methods. I don't know if I said it already, but like if you can have a conversation with somebody via smoke signal, cool. Do it. But otherwise, again, like younger generations probably don't want to be called and have to pick up the phone. So text them. Somebody who lives, friends with your grandmother may not want to be texted. Pick up the phone and call them. What do you guys think so far? Where am I, what questions you have, or where am I wrong? Definitely not the authority on anything. So like, this is stuff that we talk through together. This is where my head's at as of recent. And I think, I think this industry is forever evolving. And, this is like what I've been thinking about recently. Literally.
Hi, Jason.
Hey.
So
Right,
I'm good. How are you?
good.
I suck at making phone calls in general. I hate it's not my thing, but I think a lot of that too is what do these conversations look like? Like when you guys are picking up the phone and you're calling your database, like what are you saying to not sound so like awkward? You know what I mean? Especially when you haven't talked to somebody in a long time.
Yeah. So I think, so there's a difference between like the very first call attempt to somebody and your third, fourth, and so on years down the, your 27th call conversation with somebody 6 years from now. Right. So to answer the question, the first call, like you're committed to lead generation, you're calling, say you're a new agent, understand that you have to lead generate, starting with the people you're calling them up, it's uncomfortable. What do you talk about? Hey, how's it going? Just wanted to check in. It's been a while since we talked. Again, embrace that. So not only is human nature reciprocal, but ultimately people want to avoid confrontation or awkwardness. So they're going to do what they can do to help you, not make this as an awkward experience as possible. Okay. Don't get me wrong. It may still seem awkward at times, but like, if you're feeling awkward, the other person on the other end is too. So ultimately you're asking them how they're doing. They're going to talk to you back. And I guess my point is very rarely is somebody going to have the moxie or whatever to just be like, Tom, why the hell are you calling me out of the blue? What is your problem?
Yeah.
F off.
Some may
Right.
do that.
Well, listen, if that happens, then cool. At least you know where you stand. And you can either remove them from your database or, try again 3 months later, whatever it is, right? But honestly, understand that. Like, people don't want to get into confrontation. So they're going to try to avoid it. And even if they get off the phone and they're like, that was awkward, who cares? They're going to move on with their day. They'll forget about it quickly. So you're just, for lack of a better word, talking about the weather. Not literally, but just that analogy. Talk about anything. And ultimately, if these are people that you probably have something to relate back to them with, right? And if it's the very first phone call and it's a friend from high school that you haven't spoken with since high school, you're at least able to, hey, crazy, it's been 15 years. Can you believe our 15-year high school reunion is next year? How you been? Where are you at? Where are you still in Rochester? What's going on? I came across your name and figured I'd give you a shout.
So
Most people are going to respect that and think that's kind of cool, because especially this day and age where I don't know, there's an element of privacy, I guess, right? More than ever. And actually this has kind of evolved and I don't know, maybe it's gone back, but I remember before COVID, we were having a conversation with our team in a team meeting of the topic was, guys, look at, it's borderline offensive to call somebody these days. So just, don't be, and again, this was before the new bold, right? So hey, don't be afraid to text, adapt to communication methods, right? And then COVID hit and it's these care calls or whatever you want to call them. And people are stuck inside their house and people got back into man, this is cool. I like talking with people. I haven't seen anybody in 3 months and thank God you're calling me. About to pull my hair out. Right. Well, now that that's over and people are back in action, sick of each other again, you just know that if you're bringing the warm smile, very rarely is somebody on the other end of the phone or whatever it is, very rarely is somebody going to just combat you with why are you calling me? Even if they feel that way. They'll do what they can to get through the conversation and not make it as awkward as possible. So then you get in the reciprocal stuff of and this is, so the point I want to make is when you get onto your second call and your third call and so on and so forth, having a system that allows you to keep track of everybody in your database and where they're at, what you talked about last, is key to making lead generation even easier. And here's the example that I use all the time. If you talk to Johnny today and he says, you're just shooting the shit, there's no lead that came from it, but he's Junior's in football, he's doing great. And then you want to follow up with him 3 months from now. Well, now you got something, keep track of that conversation. So, talked about Johnny Jr. in football. You're calling him up right out of the gates. Hey, how'd Johnny Jr. do this year in football? You told me he was on the Lions and I saw the Lions play yesterday. I thought of you. I figured I'd give you a shout. Now they're like, oh my God. They may not say that, but it's oh, cool. Thanks for thinking of me, man. Yeah, you actually killed it. You had 6 touchdowns. Cool.
Hey, in the Ignite tools, so I know this ignites for new agents, but they talk about Ford options that you can use in any basically any conversation. So I'm looking at one, remind them you're in real estate, or I'm new in real estate. So Ford is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams.
Yep.
Have you ever pursued that dream that you had? So it kind of gives you something that you can start a conversation with.
Yeah. And I think being purposeful to track your people and the conversations you're having and where they're at in their life makes lead generation that much easier. And even if it's not something that you talk to them directly about, but whatever, social media is a huge tool to use these days, right? So if it's summertime and you saw they're on the boat this weekend and you call them up and ask them about their boat, you're playing to their interests, and that's going to have, an effect, a good effect. Who was that? Dom that asked the original question? Did I ramble? So I don't even know if I answered it.
Well, it was me. You did.
Okay, cool. I think that's key, is finding a way to make it easy to just, to just have the ammunition to pick up the phone and start firing away. A lot of times it's half the battle. Because there is a certain, again, this is hard, guys. There's a certain level of paralysis involved with just like, okay, I got to do this. I know I have to do this, but what the hell am I going to talk to this person about? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I hate saying it like this, right? But there's just a certain level of, buck up and do it. But finding a way to be purposeful and effective to find the easiest way to do it or bring the most value is key. Now, here's this value concept, right? Like we're always told, like bring value, add value. Don't think of it as real estate value. Here's a dirty little secret, guys. Nobody cares what you have going on. They have their own lives to live. Nobody cares that you're calling and like trying to convert them into a lead for their real estate business. They're hanging up the phone and then like going on with their life. It's all these touches that add up to the science of being remembered. Very rarely are you going to call somebody and, oh my God, Tom, thanks for calling. I'm actually listing my house next week. What do you have, ESP or whatever? And how'd you know? Come over here. Put a sign in my yard Tuesday. It doesn't work like that, guys. Very rarely does it work to where like you just, make a random phone call one day on a Tuesday and you're listing their house on Friday and you haven't talked to them in 3 years. So you got to understand that it's not rejection or failure if they just, all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but like just don't have anything to give you, right? Or don't seem engaged. They got their own life going on. They're not calling you to try to get their agenda on your plate. But herein lies the opportunity of like the relationship that you're building, because this is just, and I don't know, I'm a puppy, but like, I don't think this really happened at a high level ever. In terms of like people like going out of their way to build relationships to where when people need something, they think of you. Don't get me wrong, there's cold calling. That's always been a thing of, hey, your car warranty's up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's again, it's filling buckets of water with drops. You got to understand, every drop that hits that bucket, chances are that person you just talked to, they could care less. But something happened scientifically in their head to where if you continue that and you continue with the consistency of that, then when they actually need something, you'll be the one that they remember. Consistency is the biggest key here, because without that, the other, not a myth, but I think everybody probably realizes it. You're not just going to call somebody one time and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, cemented. Listing my house with you 10 years from now, no problem. Thanks for that call. You got to have the consistency to just stay in touch and stay, and that's where like the other marketing stuff comes into play too. This is why the 36 touch program works. There's a scientific angle behind how that was developed, in that if you're touching your people that many times per year, now you're really positioned to actually be remembered. And you're also timely with each touch, in terms of not enough time goes, goes by where there isn't a touch, to where a life event can happen. Somebody wins the lottery and they're buying a house 2 weeks later. Like, you're always on them. You're always in front of them. You get to the point where the goal is that people have no choice. If you're doing it the right way, people have no choice but to remember that you're in real estate. Now, they have a choice to use you or not. And if they don't use you because their new girlfriend's cousin is a newly licensed agent and you better use her, otherwise you're, not going to be happy otherwise. That stuff happens all the time in this business. But it's in a way, it's still a win if, you get that call of like, hey man, look, I appreciate, all the mailers you've sent me, and we've talked 8 times in the last 2 years, but Jane's cousin just got a real estate license. If I don't go with her, I'm not going to be a good spot here moving forward. That's going to happen. And there's also just people that want to keep like personal life and business life separate. But that doesn't mean that they can't refer business to you because they know you're on top of your game, even though I had to use my girlfriend's newly licensed cousin as my agent. That doesn't mean they can't tell all their friends and everybody else that they know, hey, you got to use Jason. He's on top of his game. I got a hard out at 1 p.m. So I apologize for not being able to go over, but so we got 8 minutes here. What I want to open it up. Anything and everything. Doesn't have to be about lead generation. You're welcome to fire any random on topic or off topic question, thought at me.
I appreciate the reminder that, you do what works for you and do what you have to do to just remind people that you're in it. And I think that that's really important for me because I'm so terrified of coming across as salesy. So my tactic of just being active and, what works for me is social media. And it's more just letting people know how busy I really am, so that they will feel protected by reaching out to me. And I think, it's been great so far. I've criticized myself for maybe not doing things the KW way or, making calls the same way. And I appreciate hearing that there's like, you just do what works for you,
I think as long as as long as you're consistent with the effort, right?
Yeah.
From there, whatever works for you. And I think that was, like Chris said, like it was wise of Bold to pivot the program to where like, it's the day and age we live in. Like,
Right.
well, I mean, shit, I don't want to talk on the phone if I don't have to.
Right. And that's the reality. So when I joined KW and they kept saying lead gen, it was like making me stomach sick, like, I have no interest in that. And recognizing that like lead gen could be a Facebook message or lead gen could be a text. It was like, oh, game changer. Okay, great. I'm doing that.
Yep. No. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's that hierarchy of effectiveness.
Sure, for sure.
But that doesn't mean that you're not effective if you're, communicating via text, for example.
Yeah. Even for that initial, get it going, build the relationship. And then obviously it's more comfortable for everyone when you're meeting up.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, like, if anything, I hope I touched on a lot of like myth busters here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially headed in, where we are just in life these days. Like, the MREA or Bold or whatever, like, due for an update.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that like the scientific angle that what people are trained on is accurate, tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to learn how to adapt. And also, we just have to acknowledge, like, you're failing 95% of the time in this pursuit. And that's where, like, I think the industry has it wrong. Before you should have to sign a waiver before you start licensing school. Hey, you're going to do 75 hours right now. Are you ready to fail 95% of the time? Because then it's like, what? What do you mean? And you better look into it some more for some additional research before you commit to this business. Who else got something? Question, anything. Doesn't have to be about lead gen. The chat box. Tom, I sucked. I love it. Yep. Guys, we're all in the same boat. Again, you give me the person who's claiming their expert level consistent as as the sun rises and it sets every day. I'm either wanting to sit down with them and pick their brain or calling them out for their BS. It's coming from me too. 10 years in the business. The struggle is real. I have a hard out at 1 because I have a coaching call and he's gonna be like, how'd you lead generate this week? I'm like, kick me while I'm down, Brad. It's all good though. Having an awareness of it is key. I'll talk about that real quick. Like finding a way to do a mental audit as often as possible. Start with a week. Like you have to find a way to where like, okay, reflect on the week. Did I do what I need to do to move my business forward this week? And if you can admit that you didn't, well, you better turn it on next week and do double time. But if you could get to the point where you're doing that every day and you're, hey, can I hang my hat on the day here? It's okay if you can't. Just know that tomorrow you better turn it on. Because I could tell you in this business, in this market, you can like you can have bad days all the time, right? Recover quickly from them. Life happens, guys, where you could have a bad week, you know, God forbid, you know, death and family, whatever, and you're out of commission for the week, can't do anything. It's really tough to recover from 2 bad weeks and not have a bad quarter as a result.
Jason, maybe these guys can do what I did the other day to open up some conversations on Facebook when I wished everybody a happy birthday with an eye roll.
Yeah.
That helped, you know, because then I had to send him a message separately and was like, oh my God, I did not mean to roll my eyes at you, and then to insert a birthday cake. But it really did start generating a lot of questions or like conversation. So I may be onto something new.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, if anything, that's like it's almost bold in a way, right? Like, you know, being not that you did it on purpose, right? But you could take the concept is like, how purposeful can you get to try to get people's attention to where you're actually going to get into conversations with them from there. Guys, I appreciate everybody hopping on. This is a great crew. I'm going to be, I'm doing these from now on noon every Friday, covering for Anthony while he's banged up here. So, you know, what I'll tell you is, you're welcome to reach out to me individually anytime as well. But, you know, I'm hoping to run through a good coverage of topics in the next, you know, month or two, however long it takes. I'm here. So.